Thanks, Annalie. Hello, good morning, everyone, or good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm excited to be the first event of the day here. As Annalie mentioned, my name is Alex Foote. I'm here on the customer success team at SourceMap. I've had the pleasure of working with a number of large apparel, footwear, and textile industries over the last year or so. And more recently, I've gotten to work with some technology and more CPG type industries. So I'm really excited to get to chat with Victoria today. Victoria is a corporate development advisor at EcoVadis, which is a globally recognized independent business sustainability rating company. After working in communications and public affairs, Victoria joined EcoVadis to support the company's development with a focus specifically on strategy and corporate affairs. She's French, based in Paris, and after living and working for nearly a decade in the UK and Germany. So welcome, Victoria.
Hi, Alex.
Um,
Thank you very much for having me.
Great. So we're going to go through, I'm going to chat with Victoria for a little bit, but I will leave some times towards the end for some audience questions. And as we're chatting, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A box, which is at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So great, let's kick it off. First, Victoria, tell us a little bit more about EcoVadis.
Yeah, of course. So you mentioned we are a globally recognized independent business sustainability ratings company. So what does that mean? Our ratings are primarily used by procurement organizations to manage their risks in the supply chain, drive improvement, and have an impact. So ratings are often used in the context of companies' supply chain due diligence requirements. And more specifically, we'll help them solve two key issues with their due diligence initiatives. The first one is engaging with large volumes of suppliers across the globe to participate in our sustainability questionnaire. And the second is that we have a global standardized methodology that really enables them to compare apples to apples. So with suppliers of very different sizes in different industries and different geography, sorry. A little more about who we are. EcoVadis was launched back in 2007, so it's been 16 years. It was launched by two entrepreneurs, Frédéric Trinel and Pierre-François Thaler. And now we've grown to become a global company of 1,700 people with offices in Asia, North America, and Europe. And something I really want to also add is that EcoVadis last year formally became what we call a purpose-driven company under the French law, which is the equivalent of a benefit corporation for some of you who know this either in the US or in Italy, for example. And our mission is to guide all companies towards a sustainable world. And we do this with the suite of solutions, delivering insights for improvement and based on a collaborative approach through our network and through our sector initiatives.
That's really great to hear about your company becoming a mission-driven company. SourceMap's also mission-driven, so I know we can do a lot to help impact the worlds that we're working in. What are some of the key market trends that EcoVadis is looking at over the next year?
Yeah, so I think here, no big surprises. There are three defining trends that we're looking at more closely, and that is the climate crisis, sustainability regulations, and hyper-digitalization in business. So if I take first the climate crisis, we're really looking at how companies are navigating the collaboration that is required to respond to this challenge. We know that awareness has progressed, but still not enough. When you look at the majority of companies, their emissions primarily come from their scope 3 emissions. So that is emissions in their supply chain. And when it comes to companies in supply chain, which are for the most part quite small companies, there's a very low maturity. And so there's just not that capacity to measure the carbon footprint, let alone define effective climate strategies. So with the climate crisis is really that collaboration piece and how do we solve that puzzle. The second trend that I mentioned, the rise in sustainability regulations, and I know that today there will be plenty of additional sessions to go deeper into this. We've seen the environment changing. I mean, as I mentioned, EcoVadis has operated for 16 years, and we've always operated in a regulatory environment, but we've noticed a change in the direction, scale, and intensity of the regulations. The pace has accelerated. We've counted that the number of corporate due diligence regulations has approximately doubled in the last 5 years. And also the requirements are more robust. There's a shift from disclosure only to more granular requirements. And overall, we're shifting from voluntary to mandatory reporting. Finally, the last thing to mention about this is that public authorities are also stepping up in terms of enforcement. So for example, in Germany or in Norway, we've seen that there are new enforcement agencies responsible for monitoring companies' compliance. And that's also new from companies who were mostly expected to be transparent and disclose, but not so much with implementing new processes or ways of working. And then finally, the last trend that I mentioned, hyper-digitalization of business, cutting across all business areas. Of course, got to mention AI, which comes to mind. And I think there's so much to say about how that will significantly affect the way that businesses as a whole operate. We're also looking at it through the lens of how will that help solve sustainability issues and what are the sustainability issues inherent to digitalization and technology. We think it will have also some implications about quality and access to sustainability data, which is a trend that we're very excited about, especially when you combine that with regulations and how that can be an opportunity and a challenge for business.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, I have a background in a previous life of helping companies with their sustainability reports. I certainly understand the ESG data journey there. You also mentioned environmental sustainability regulations. This is also something that SourceMap is closely following. How is EcoVadis navigating the large number of global environmental and social regulations that are impacting the businesses that you work with?
Well, we know it's very tricky for companies to navigate this environment. There are many regulations coming, but I think the most tricky is really the uncertainty on where we will land on some key regulations. I mean, I'm thinking of the CS3D, which is the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive in the EU, but there's also the SEC, which is Securities and Exchange Commission disclosure proposal in the US, and those are still in the making, and we don't have full confidence about where that is going to land. So the first point is really uncertainty. The second piece is that customers are a bit lost. And when we talk to them, what really comes through loud and clear is that they're looking for expertise and expertise that they can rely on. So that's been really our focus so far, is to try and give some guidance that can really help companies understand before they can act. You've talked about the volume of regulations, and I think here what's really key to emphasize and something that we really want to share with our customers and our clients is that these regulations, if I'm thinking of due diligence, for example, but it's the same for disclosure, these have a common architecture, right? So we have a lot of different regulations, but they have some common principles based on some classic regulatory frameworks, which aren't regulatory, but frameworks. I'm thinking about the OECD frameworks. I'm thinking about the United Nations guiding principles on human rights. And those have already informed the way we've worked with our customers and companies we've been working with in the past for the last decade or so. So again, some new grounds and really, but at the same time, trying to emphasize what we already have and what we're already basing ourselves on, and trying to bring it back to the reality of sustainable procurement that a lot of our customers are already familiar with and how it will relate to future due diligence requirements.
Yeah, that's great. finding, especially what you said, finding the commonality of these regulations and frameworks is often key to helping your customers. It can be overwhelming with so many different regulations and different standards going on. So it's really great to hear that you all are trying to help your clients by finding some commonality there. So sustainability and compliance were previously two separate priorities, but we're seeing now that this has evolved over the last couple of years. SourceMap has certainly started to see this change and think differently about how we approach these areas. Has that changed the way that EcoVadis operates?
It's a really, really good question. I think there's still to be understood about this. I would say yes and no. Yes, because the shift from sustainability to compliance is absolutely, evolving the way we approach those challenges for sustainability. And you're right, we're seeing compliance becoming more involved in the sustainability topic and contributing more to the conversation. We're seeing some new customers come into us to sustainable procurement through that angle of compliance. And this is quite different from how we were working with, more mature companies that came to sustainable procurement more through sustainability. That being said, I would say it's still early days, and what we're seeing is more cross-functional collaboration, but not so much full ownership by compliance, and more broadly, cross-functional collaboration between sustainability with compliance, as well as legal and finance teams, and how those different pieces come together. Now, taking a step back, I would say, we need to ask ourselves, what value can compliance bring to the topic and the challenges we're trying to solve? And compliance can be a big driver for internal enforcement. It can shift the perception from this is nice to have to this is business essential or best practice in the market. And I think this in turn really helps us deliver customer value and ultimately the transformative, outcomes we want to achieve. And at the same time, I think we need to be aware of the limitations, right, of a compliance-driven approach. Compliance can, in some cases, lead us to a more tick-the-box approach, and that would have an impact on how that transforms the outcomes for people and planet in supply chains.
Yep, that's great to hear. And it definitely makes sense. We're seeing as well with some of our customers, maybe we'll have to meet with multiple different cross-functional teams on their end to try to tackle one issue. And I think we'll definitely be seeing more of that in the future. So for our audience context for you, I'm going to ask one more question and then I'll want to open it up to your questions. So, keep sending the questions in and we'll get to those shortly. But, always trying to end on a kind of positive note here. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the potential regulations to drive better corporate, social, and environmental practices?
Yeah, I think what is unfolding is unprecedented, and I would say I'm excited about this time for all of us working in corporate sustainability and the potential. There's still a long way to go, but when I speak with my colleagues who have been in the space for a long time, they remind me we've already moved quite a bit in the last decade, and that's I think cause for optimism. I would say it's cautious optimism in the sense that, we need to be careful, right? I like to refer here to a report from the Shift Project, which is a think tank with deep expertise on the UN guiding principles on business and human rights that I mentioned previously. And in this report, they published a guide to really help companies with their extra financial reporting, especially with CSRD, which is the new EU Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. And they talk about the link between reporting and action and arguing that too often the link between the two is tenuous, which results in empty promises. And so I think for us in this field, such as SourceMap or EcoVadis, we really have this role to play in this environment that's unfolding to empower companies to translate their actions into reporting and make sure that we connect the two so that it underpins underpins business transformation. So for me, that's where the promise lies. And again, being cautiously optimistic about the potential for regulation to have an impact.
Cautious optimism is definitely the way to go here. So I see two questions so far. And I think they're actually pretty similar. So the first one is, how should corporations think about broader supply chain engagement ecosystem across tools like CDP supply chain, EcoVadis, SourceMap, and others? And how do they potentially overlap? And the second question is asking specifically for you all at EcoVadis. Are you all involved in working across some of these platforms within customers to provide more homogenization?
Yeah, thanks. I think that's an excellent question, and for sure front of mind of what we are concerned about in terms of what some of the challenges that our customers are facing. I think, as you said, the reality is that we are in a fragmented market, and that today we are still lacking that homogenization across different platforms. I would say that I see this as a benefit in the sense that there is a wealth of competing services and solutions, and I think ultimately that benefits customers and companies. I think again, this is where regulation will play an important role in standardizing data frameworks and create more interoperability across these different frameworks, which I think will further facilitate the ability to go from one to the other. Absolutely don't want to understate the challenge that is. And I think the second person states it, quite bluntly, is that there is a fatigue with reporting, and we need to be very careful with additional reporting requirements from our regulatory actors. How do we make sure that we don't reach this point where people feel like they're investing more of their efforts into reporting rather than actually acting? We have some, works. I think we can go further, and I think we can work more closely with different actors in the field. But there are some partnerships that we are working on, and hopefully we'll be able to share more in a few months with some exciting developments.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we're definitely hearing a lot about the supplier fatigue issue as well. SourceMap started off with cocoa and coffee years ago, and I think the industry is maybe only recently starting to get more standardized. So now that these regulations are moving across these other industries, hopefully some standardization can follow and help alleviate some of that burden. But yeah, understand that there are a lot of different platforms, and you don't want to be as Americans say, jack of all trades, master of none, but you also want to help help suppliers comply with these regulations. So I'm not seeing any more questions come in yet. So potentially we could wrap here. Was there any kind of last final thoughts that you had that you'd like to share with the group here?
Thanks, Alex. I really appreciate the invitation. I think my key message was that we know this is a really challenging environment for a lot of companies who are seeing these changes, are trying to come to grasp with what it's going to mean for their business. I think, and I hope that I can convey that this is a real business opportunity for transforming how some of these practices are implemented, both in a company's own operations, in their supply chains. And I would say overall, at EcoVadis, we're very excited to be going through this journey with all customers.
Thank you. And what's next for EcoVadis? What are you most excited about?
Well, there's a lot of developments. Just recently, we just launched a new product with a product carbon footprint exchange. capability for customers, and that's really going to make a step difference in the ability of our customers to collect carbon data. So we just announced it just a couple of days, and we're really excited. And more generally in the carbon space, we're just seeing a lot of potential, as I mentioned earlier, for collaboration and really how do we leverage the sector initiatives that we have going on to further those outcomes. I think we might have another question about from James. Are you able to share some details of applying supply chain sustainability data to clearly support CSRD and how to raise that area of materiality for non-financial reporting? So I'm not sure I'll be able to provide you with a very detailed response. I think the underlying principle to really keep in mind when it comes to extra financial reporting and your supply chain is that the underlying principle is that you should always apply the same sustainability metrics to your own operations and to your supply chains, and really how do you extend that across the board. There's been a lot of discussions around, materiality and how do you assess that. I think, of course, there's a lot of guidance out there, and this isn't, our role as we stop ourselves where consultancy starts, but we really use the methodology as the benchmark in terms of assessing what is material depending on your company size, depending on your industry, and depending on your location.